We wake up with a metallic taste of blood in our mouths. That line sounds unhinged in English, and in this episode it becomes a surprisingly good metaphor for how Legora is being built. Max Junestrand told Jack Altman, with Chaitan on the board, how a legal AI company went from seed to almost 400 people in about 2 years, while treating most of its own work like it's temporary. Welcome to X-Pulse Digest. This was Uncapped with Jack Altman, and the fun part is watching how AI native becomes a real operating system, not a vibe. Especially when your customers are lawyers who will absolutely call your bluff. Back in 2023 and 2024, the common advice was basically, train your own models, fine-tune, own the intelligence. Legora took the opposite bet. The claim inside their seed pitch was that foundation models would keep getting smarter fast, and the durable work would be everything around the model. Max's argument was blunt. Fine-tuning doesn't really seem to work, at least at the scale they needed, and training a new generation model costs billions. So instead of trying to out-model the model labs, they went after the messy stuff that actually makes AI usable inside a law firm. Data compliance and privacy, file uploads that don't break, parsing, chunking, retrieval with citations, guardrails, context window problems, rate limits, even juggling different models for different tasks. That framing mattered because legal customers weren't going to pay for ChatGPT but with a logo. Lawyers are smart, well-educated, tech-forward, and they're already playing with ChatGPT and Claude. Add Microsoft Copilot on top because law firms live in Word and Outlook. So if your product isn't clearly better than the foundation model experience they already have, why would it deserve budget? And that forces an uncomfortable question. If the models keep improving, what exactly are you selling that survives the next model drop? Legora didn't start with a big panel of legal experts deciding the roadmap. The early team was basically all engineers, and the first lawyer didn't join until 9 months in. Instead, they did the most unglamorous thing that works. Max says he cold messaged lawyers on LinkedIn and offered to buy them lunch and pay their hourly fee, just to learn how the work actually runs. Most of them were too nice to take the money, and sometimes paid for lunch themselves. But the real product was the understanding. There's also an origin story twist. The company formation started back in 2020, before Max joined, with 4 co-founders experimenting with early BERT-style models, including a Swedish-trained version. It wasn't just weak, it was blatantly racist, because of what it had been trained on. When GPT 3.5 arrived, the moment shifted. 2 co-founders left, and Max joined as they turned it into the sprinting company people now recognize. Even the first lawyer hire came in through gravity, not recruiting. He was the CIO at a big Swedish firm they wanted as a customer, had built his own early GPT plus document management setup, and decided, basically, if you can't beat them, join them. That kind of learning posture, engineers embedded in the reality of legal work, set them up for the next problem, which isn't intelligence, it's workflow at scale. A chat box is a terrible interface for certain legal work, even if the model is great. Due diligence is the perfect example. You're reviewing hundreds of documents, often thousands, and they'll never fit into one context window. So, Legora built a different shape of product. Max describes a tabular review grid, a big matrix where you throw in tens of thousands of documents, load up your prompts, and run the analysis in parallel. It's less like chatting with a model and more like supervising an industrial process. What's interesting is how that mapped to their org design. Instead of a traditional product management layer, they leaned into a founder-heavy engineering culture. 3 engineers would take something like tabular review and treat it like their own mini company. The head of engineering had been a solo YC founder, Their VP product was also a legal tech founder, and also a lawyer and GC. The logic is simple and kind of ruthless. In an AI company, features can become irrelevant in 6 months. So you optimize for deep technical understanding and fast shipping, not a polished roadmap deck. But shipping fast doesn't mean shipping everything. The discipline showed up in a very specific 30-day crunch. In early September 2024, a month before general availability on October 1st, Max pulled the whole company into a room in Sweden. 10 people, chicken wings, beer, and peanuts. The question was not, what's our vision? It was, how do we get this out in 30 days? They had too many plausible directions. LLMs made it feel like they could solve 15 legal use cases at once. They couldn't. So they killed a bunch of darlings and focused on 3 things they believed the market was already proving out. One was big tabular extraction, that grid-style work at scale. Another was deep integration into Word and Outlook, so Legora shows up where lawyers already live. And the broader bet was to do those few things better than anyone. Max says they were doing about $1.5 million in revenue at the time, and it stung watching a company with just one of those features out-earn them. The manifesto went out, the team rallied, and the results hit fast. Their next quarter doubled revenue, from roughly 1.5 to 4. Then the next quarter doubled again, from 4 to 8. That's when the company felt like it had a repeatable motion, and it set up a stranger shift. Their product stopped being tools for humans and started being tools that agents use. Inside Legora, there's a line from their CTO that lands like a warning. The platform has 2 users now, human users and agent users, and every feature has to work for both. That changes what good UI even means. Humans might never touch certain features directly. Agents will. Max says they're already seeing more people use an agent that operates the tabular grid, or an agent that uses word editing capabilities, rather than humans going into those features themselves. This is where the company's culture starts to sound almost backwards compared to classic SaaS. You build something, you polish it, you ship it, you celebrate it, and then you delete it, because a new model release made your scaffolding unnecessary. They describe it as a test of ego. You can't treat your work as sacred IP because the foundation models keep absorbing your cleverness. When they got early access to GPT 4.5, it suddenly became possible for the model to draft end-to-end without all the harnesses around it. The response wasn't pride, it was delete it all. So what do you hold on to if you're willing to delete what you built for 6 months? One answer is the ability to measure reality, not vibe. That's where their obsession with Evals comes in. Legora treated evaluation as core infrastructure early, not as a checkbox. Part of that was picking between models, but the bigger part was turning real legal work into measurable targets. Customers helped. Law firms would give them manual tasks they already do and say, in effect, here are the test cases. Call us when you can hit 100%. Max remembers a funds-related task, an LPA key term review report, that a Danish firm spent 3 days of associate time producing. In the summer of 2024, Legora was at about 60% accuracy on that task. By the end of that summer, they got to 100%. And then something important happens when you truly hit 100% on a defined task. In Max's words, that task is done. It's over. They strike it out and go hunt the next, more complex thing. That philosophy also explains why they don't really want a traditional long-term roadmap. The iteration cycles are getting shorter. Model upgrades used to be incremental. Then an Opus release flipped capability and forced them to revisit what they'd built. The twist is, Max now thinks they're not waiting for new model capabilities anymore. The models are intelligent enough, and the bottleneck has moved to everything around them. Giving the model the right tools and environment, and giving humans a trustworthy way to review and adopt the work. Trust becomes product, and trust shows up most brutally when you ask a customer to bet their workflow on you. Which is why Legora's go-to-market is unusually aggressive and unusually low friction. Legora's early growth motion wasn't the classic SaaS playbook. Instead of tight, time-boxed trials that get shut off to force a buying decision, they'd run 30, 60, 90-day pilots, whatever the customer wanted. And they'd leave behind what the firm built during the pilot, even if the firm didn't buy. The point was velocity of customer interaction, remove friction, get real usage, learn fast. They also staffed it with what they call legal engineers, forward-deployed lawyers who are tech-savvy and don't want the partner track life, and who can drive change inside elite firms. Max says they've ripped out competitors in places where the old deployment had little usage because Legora could show real value quickly, then migrate. That same velocity shows up in how they expanded. Chaitan tells a story of Max having dinner in San Francisco, asking for a ride to the airport, and casually mentioning he's flying to New Delhi because a major firm in India wanted to buy. In the old world, you'd do regions in order. Here, they just went. Then there's the culture piece, the part that starts with taste the blood and ends with something more operational. Everyone interviews in Stockholm. Everyone onboards in Stockholm. Offices get seeded with culture carriers, so New York feels like Stockholm, and dinner is still at 8 p.m. It's intense, but the intensity is pointed at one idea. Being number two isn't worth it. The most useful insight from Max isn't a tactic, it's a posture. Assume anything AI can do, it will do. Your job is to build the environment, the trust, and the organization that can delete its own work without a meltdown. If you want the full story, including the pilots, the internal expiration date idea for executives, and how they think about scaling without a traditional roadmap, listen to Max Junestrand on Uncapped with Jack Altman. The question it leaves you with is uncomfortable in the best way. If the models aren't the bottleneck anymore, what part of your company still deserves to exist?